Welcome to the Success Resequencing Project. I'm Debbie Ponticus.
And I'm Jenn Newman.
Join us as we challenge the traditional definitions of success so you can build a fulfilling path of your own.
Get ready for inspired, candid conversations while gaining tools, inspiration, and confidence to create your own authentic success story.
Hello, hello. Good morning.
Greetings. Hello.
Yes. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
How are you?
You know, I'm good. But I have been, well, listen, I think we all get anxiety, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't? But I've been feeling it a lot more lately. And so, of course, what do? You go find a podcast about it. That's what I do, right?
Okay.
But it was really, eye-opening to have that word dissected. And then it made total sense to me, like how I think I need to address it. But a definition that I got off of this podcast was that anxiety is the combination of lack of control and uncertainty. So lack of control in a situation and uncertainty in a situation turns into anxiety. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, hello, that's real estate.
Nice.
Right? Mm-hmm. Like, let's just look at what we do on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. We have no control when you're a buyer's agent. You have no control if they are going to actually end up buying something.
Yeah.
Seller's agent, now in this market, we have no control over when we're going to be able to promise to deliver the result that they're expecting, which is to get their home under contract and sold.
We've never had control.
No. Mm-hmm. And then uncertainty in a situation. Well, that's real estate, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting here realizing that I am in a job, in a career that is both of those things, like on a daily basis, lack of control, uncertainty. And so it's like, no wonder, because I am as you know, control freak. And it's like, this, am I compounding my anxiety because of I'm trying to control things that are not controllable, right? So there we have it. So let's unpack that for a second.
Okay. Got the suitcase? Let's unzip it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yes.
And scene.
Insane. So, but do you feel, so let me ask it this way. Do you feel that that is the only root of the anxiety for you?
I feel, so I'm using real estate just as like it is what I do. So it's like but it really is like, I have like for right now, I'm about to leave on a big trip and it will be the first time I've ever flown by myself overseas and going to something by myself. I mean, I'm 48 years old, but this is like a really big thing that I am struggling with. So it's causing me anxiety, right? Like but because of, again, I don't know what to expect when I'm getting there and I have no control over that. So but that's where I think it's just about really me internalizing a lot of, recently as you know, I always have 600 things going on. It's just part of who I am. I'm a workaholic. I love being busy. We've talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
So I was like, am I just doing too much? Am I overwhelmed? Like, what is this feeling that I'm feeling? And then I realized I think it truly is just this fear of the unknown. It is this lack of being able to control that causes me a lot of unease. And that's in all parts of my life, not just about real estate. I just happen to pick a career that is something that is completely uncontrollable.
Right.
We have no control when we're getting paid. We have no control about, how successful like the year is going to be because interest rates can change that in a heartbeat or, there's so many things that impact our livelihood that we can't control.
There are many factors.
So it's like, okay, I need to flip the switch on it.
Do you feel that you've been able to control things up until now?
Yes. And I don't feel out of control, but I'm feeling more aware I guess you could say, of the anxiety feelings that that I have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but maybe it is because there's a lot more on my plate than I've had in the past. I don't know.
It's usually not circumstantial, right? It is what it is. And it will show up in a way that where the place that we likely have been able to feign control in the past, because the truth is we've never been able to control it. We can't. We have no control. We have control over one thing, and that is really over our mind, right? That's really the only thing that we can truly control. We can't control life and death. We can't control other people. We can't control our children. We can't control our life. We can't control the world's circumstances. When you really start to unpack it, there is nothing we can control, but we can control our thoughts. And some would even argue that's challenging at times. So usually it'll express itself in a way that is in an area that we think we've had all this control. And then all of a sudden something's out of whack and we don't. And now we see it there. It's almost like that's where it gets our attention. But it's rare that we are anxiety ridden in one area and it's not all there. It's the anxiety is at the root of it all. So that's why I asked that question the way I did, because I thought that anxiety was in relation to something specific. And then when I realized there was awareness in one area and I could see it there, then I realized, oh, it's everywhere. I actually do have anxiety. Okay, let's work on what the root of that anxiety is instead of band-aiding where I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
And that's been a really interesting journey because it can be very overwhelming. And when you have awareness, when you know better, you do better, right? So when you start to see it, now it's like, oh, hi, friend. Cool. And here we are over here. And that for me was the wake-up call that I didn't want it to control my life.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided to ask for help, because for me personally, I could see that was a real slippery slope and I wasn't getting out. I couldn't change the loop. It's like I could figure it all out and I'd get to a point and I'd be like, crap, okay, no, that doesn't change it. And I'd get back and then we'd start again. Yeah. And I'd mentally try to work through it all over again. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm raising the white flag. Like, I'm not going to do this. Yeah. And to have an event like that, something that's taking you completely out of your comfort zone, there's a difference between being anxious and having anxiety.
Yes, I will. Yes. And I think let's talk about that for a second because, your body reacts to being anxious, right? Like if you're about to get on stage and perform, if you're about to go in and ask for a raise at your job or go into a job interview or whatever, your body has natural reactions to being anxious.
Yes.
And it is anxiety of that point in time of what you're about to go do, right? The sweaty palms, the indigestion, the beating heart really fast.
The adrenaline
kicks in.
Yep.
And so, I think we all tend to try and calm ourselves down in those moments, right? But it's like your body's just reacting. And this doctor that was on this podcast this morning that I was listening to about this, she, and I'm not going to remember her name because I don't remember my name most days, but she said, you can't fight that. Don't fight that. That's a natural response. And that just means you care. That means you care about what you are about to do. That means you care about the result of what's going to happen and whatever you're about to embark on. So that's like what you should focus on, is that this is a good thing. If you didn't care, you wouldn't have these reactions. You wouldn't have these nervous feelings and anxiety feelings. She was like, but let's flip the switch. Let's change the mindset. Because it's true, when I start thinking about all these things like that I get anxious about, I'm thinking of the negatives. I'm thinking about what could go wrong. right? Like, I hate flying. Let's just put it out there. And I'm going to be on a 15-hour flight over the ocean, and I'm not super happy about that circumstance. But why? Because I'm thinking about all the negative things that could happen, right? And I'm going into meetings and all this that I have no idea what to expect. So it's no control. I have no idea of what's going to happen. I can't control it. There's uncertainty. And so she says, flip the mindset to stop thinking about the negative and think about the positive of the situation. Like, what are the good things that are going to happen about this? Like, you're going on an adventure you've never been on before. Like, you have this opportunity to go live life. If it's a job interview, you're going on this job interview, and what could happen? You could actually get the job. You could actually find success. You're going on stage to sing. You can actually get a standing ovation. People will love you. Like, focus on the positive instead of on the negative. And then it'll help calm the anxiousness, I guess you could say. So to your point, like, there is anxiousness and there's anxiety. I'm not a doctor. I don't know if there's like a clinical definition or description of the difference between the two. Like, I don't know that I have chronic anxiety where it's constantly but it's like at a point in time, like if I'm coming up to something, like it's hard to get it out of my head, like this trip, it's hard to get it out of my head. So I'm like, okay, let me distract. Like, just, I don't know. It's okay. And I'm done. You're looking at me like,
no. I'm taking it all in from the standpoint of there's a lot there.
Yeah.
I think that as someone who has been through episodes of anxiety and understanding how that's played out, there is a difference between being nervous or anxious about something and then having anxiety. And I'm not saying one is better or worse than the other. I think what is very easy to have happen is for it to take hold. And now everything has a heightened sense of anxiety around it. And that can be a slippery slope. It's also important to say that our brain is simply in its survival mode. It's looking for security and it's looking for certainty in those moments. That's what it's searching for. And we can't give it to our brain in that moment. It is new. It is uncertain. There is always there is uncertainty.
Yeah.
And when our body is trying to search for that certainty, that's where that little reptilian brain is like, we want to know we're safe.
Yeah.
And so to reassure ourselves in whatever set of coping mechanisms that is, it's really important. And the reframe is very helpful. I think it's also fair to say that sometimes if the reframe doesn't work, it's okay to say, I'm in a cycle that isn't working. And maybe I need different tools because I'm not able to kind of break that pattern. And understanding what that means for you, right?
Yeah.
Because anxiety is a tricky little beast, and being anxious can just start to trickle into other things.
Yeah.
We are never going to have certainty, and we're never going to be able to control. So it's like, let's let that go.
Yeah.
It's all an illusion. And that's what's so tricky about type A personalities. We think we have it all together. We think we've got it figured out. We think that we're on it. And if we work harder and do better and we're smarter and this, that, and the other, we can trump it. And the truth of the matter is it's still an illusion of security and it's still an illusion of control. We don't have control.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you ever have anxiety or anxious feelings with your business as far as knowing how much you've done to grow it to where it is and the anxiousness of how quickly it could go away? Like, does that make sense? Like, do you carry, because I know you have experienced a tremendous growth in your business over the last few years. Does that give you anxiety?
I think deep down inside, no, because I'm pretty realistic. I've been through some other things in my life that are that the stakes were far more higher than this is. If I were left to my own devices and I didn't have other people's opinions around me, I would not be anxious about that because I know what I've built. And I recognize that everything is cyclical. And I recognize that part of having what I have in the business is an ability to withstand and weather storms because of what I have built. And that I was very intentional from day one of building something that was not about chasing, but was about building something strong and recognizing that in my seasons where everybody was like, oh my God, it's like the easiest business in the world, I was having struggles because of what that meant in my own personal life at the time. So I genuinely believe it all works itself out. And that I'm not necessarily attached to the numbers in the same way that some people are. I don't look at this as so micro that it's like I'm judging it every step of the way. I'm looking at this. So that's part of it. But I have people's opinions that are very quick to, it's just so funny. People are just projecting their own fear, right? And I'm like, dude, I get it. I've never been able to control it. I can't control when someone's going to call. I can't control when someone's going to say yes. What I can do is give more than I receive. And that is the piece that helped quell that sense of anxiety in my business because I know I do right by my clients. I know I do the right activities and I know that I'm there to serve people. I'm not trying to chase a market. I'm not trying to capitalize on it. That's not how I built my business. So I can rest in that. It does not mean that I don't have moments of stress or anxiety around that. I just fundamentally believe that I've built something to serve others. And so long as I keep others first and their needs and service to them at the forefront, I believe that will always work. Does not mean the numbers are always I can't control that either, right? And when you've lost everything and had to rebuild it, and I've had to do that, I feel like I was put through my paces in a different way. I think it gave me a different appreciation from starting from zero. And so I came into it with a very different mindset. That was one of those moments in time where I always say God doesn't waste pain. And going through what we did in 2009, 8 and 9, when I built my business, I think it helped mitigate some of that because I knew what it was like to have my back up against a wall in a way that it's either this or we're on the street.
Well, you were able to experience the loss. So now it's not uncertain to you anymore. You know what I mean? You can survive now because you did it.
There is that evidence. Yes. But I also...
it's like, I guess where I'm coming from with that is like, I think a lot of the anxieties that I can pinpoint or times when I'm feeling anxious or, is about the fear. It's about that fear of not knowing or not having the control. It's not about not having control. It's about the fear of not having control.
Same thing.
It is, but meaning there is like, talking about like the flying, right? I know there's lots of people out there that have a fear of flying, right? Mm-hmm. That is not an uncommon thing.
Not at all.
If you look at the statistics, which I'm not going to number off the statistics because I don't know, but I've just heard that driving a car is much more dangerous than getting on an airplane.
Yes.
We know this.
And I'm a daughter of a pilot. So I can say that from the perspective of that was one thing that my dad taught me for always, because he would talk to friends who were afraid and he'd be like, let's break it down. This is how many flights go out a day. Right. This is, it is far riskier to walk across the street.
Yes. But so why is it? Why do we go there? Why does your mind go there? And for me, it's because when I'm driving the car, I'm in control.
You feel like you're in control.
I feel like I'm in control. That is a very good point. But when your life is in someone else's hands, it can completely change your perception of it, right? So that's where I'm like, okay. And to your point, you can go through and be like, okay, realistically and logically, I know that entering into whatever situation there's more likely a positive outcome than a negative outcome, but it's getting your mind to switch to the positive that I think is that mindset where personally I am like, okay, that's a really good flip of the switch to say, okay, stop focusing on what could go wrong in whatever time, whenever I'm starting to feel anxious, and focus on what's the positive. Get excited instead of feeling nervous, feel excited about something.
So I love the switch, but I also appreciate what my therapist said to me. And I'm not a therapist. And the disclaimer is that neither one of us are.
No,
and this is not to be a substitution for therapy. But what I would say to that is that my therapist actually said the more you try to convince yourself that there's nothing to be afraid of, the worse the anxiety will get.
Wow.
And so the reality is, for me personally, mine is very connected to medical anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that we had a conversation about conversation skills in a prior episode. So this is not for me to I'm not trying to take from what you're saying. I'm just trying to give perspective on what she shared with me. Okay. I don't need to be like,
oh girl, I've been there.
In episode whatever, Jen was told that.
You're not supposed to say that.
No. She actually encouraged me because the fear is still for me, it's all, well, for everyone, it's all connected to not being able to control. And I was hoping that I could somehow, in my little brain, the worst case scenario, if I just avoided that somehow, and I was like, it's all going to work out. It's all going to work out. It's all going to work out. And the reality is, actually, I don't know that it will in the end, but it doesn't give me any more control. Her point was, your brain is intrinsically trying to protect you. And so let's go there. What's the worst that can happen? And my exposure therapy is actually to do that. When I get caught in a loop, it's like, let's just go ahead and lay it out. So what is the worst case scenario? Because that gets to the root of my fear. What am I really afraid of in this moment? And then once I do that and can repeat it to myself and reread it until I don't feel that emotion anymore, then I've experienced it and I can move on. It's not to catastrophize everything. It is to then allow my brain to be like, okay, that's not actually what's happening right now. That is the worst case scenario. And then your reason and your logic can come back in and not feel like they're fighting something. It's more about, all right, okay, got it. And I've had to do that on some certain things, and it has helped. It's also about the case of the what ifs versus the what is. And to be able to, that we can what if until we're blue in the face. The answer to the riddle is we don't have control and we're all going to die. And when it really is that straightforward, it's kind of like, okay, we don't know when that's going to happen because we have no control. Yeah. So that was more of a sense of kind of a little bit of a pressure cooker release. Is like, okay, that happens to everybody. No one gets to escape that, right? Death and taxes. We always laugh about, right? Those are the two things that are for certain.
Yes.
But her point, and in those what ifs versus the what is, the what ifs can take you down all these other things. The what is the reframe. What is today? Today, we live in a world where air travel is actually, it's a preferred method of safety. It's better than getting on a ship. I mean, like look at the advancements, right?
Right.
What is true? I am highly capable. I am highly able to navigate adventure. I actually love to be spontaneous. I am very good with adventure. I have a lot of fun when I'm in an unknown situation. I'm able to shine in those moments. Those are all what is. Those things to be true.
Yeah.
And that has helped, for me personally, has helped soothe some of the things, some of the unknowns that, they may be specific to medical anxiety, but we're all faced with unknowns every single day. None of us have control.
Yeah.
And so the more we are trying to control, it's futile. It's never going to work.
Yeah.
It's an illusion. And when we realize it's an illusion, then it's kind of at least allows us to go, I don't have to control that. What I can control is what tools I can give myself to help my brain calm down and my nervous system to not be super activated. It's okay for me to be nervous because it is. It's like, it's a big trip.
Yeah.
It's totally okay to be nervous. There's nothing wrong with being nervous. And it's okay to feel anxiety around that.
Yeah.
That is actually, to the podcast point, that's normal. Mm-hmm. And it does mean that you are fully alive and present to feel those things, right? Like you're there, you're in the thick of it. And what if it all works out?
Yeah.
You don't want it to rob.
Right.
Right. None of us want to. We do not want to rob ourselves from the present moment.
Yeah.
Because the present moment is all that we know we have.
Yeah.
In this split second in time, we know that you and I are sitting in this podcast studio and we're experiencing this conversation. Everything that comes after it is a what if. We don't know. And there's something about that maybe, I can't say, it's become a relief. I can't think my way through it all. I can't. That's not, the human experience was meant to have this like kind of crazy ride and all this adventure and the ups and the downs and all the feelings that go along with it. To try to control that, exhausting.
Yeah.
Absolutely exhausting. It does not mean to like put our hands up and be like, I don't have control, so I don't have to do the work. But it does kind of help offset. Like you can't control the outcome.
Right. I mean, you're gonna still, you need to ride the roller coaster and you can put your hands up and enjoy the ride, but you're going to be buckled in, right? So there's still security there. There's still things that you will do. And, you know, not to make this whole podcast about my fear of flying, but you know, it's more of an analogy to a lot of people's fears and anxieties and things that they have, whether it's like me from that. But I feel like for me, it's because as I've gotten older, I have created this little cocoon of comfort, and I don't want anything to disrupt that cocoon of comfort, right? But the problem with that mentality is that who's to say it can't be even better, right? Who's to say that you're not, if you stop letting yourselves live life because you get too afraid that something bad's going to happen, or you're going to get someone who doesn't like you, or you're going to fail at that interview or fail at that opportunity. If you're afraid to move forward because you don't want to mess up the bubble you're in, then you're never going to see that how much better it might be
and
to
I would
live
also
life,
say
you know,
that's
and to
the beauty of faith.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where faith comes in, right? Like at some point, there has to, at least in my perspective, there has to be something bigger than ourselves. What's it all for if there's not, right? And I think that in just as much of the faith that when we get on an airplane, we have highly skilled, highly qualified pilots behind the wheel who have been through immense training, and we have skilled aviation and we have, all those things, right? Like I can logically walk through that, but I am putting my life in someone else's hands. And that's when I have to stop and remind myself that every minute of my life is in someone else's hands. If I believe in faith, if faith is the thing that I believe in, or have that faith of something that is unseen, then aren't we ultimately all in the hands of whether it's God or universe or Mother Earth, or aren't we all being held by some? I don't feel like we're wandering aimlessly around the world, right? So it's kind of that stop of like, God's got me. I'm good. And here I am. And today's another day. And we're going to go march on and do what we're supposed to do. And I'm going to trust that it is not for no reason. And that I'm going to continue to live out my purpose with every breath that I have. The rest of it, I have no control of when, like Emily Sikorsky said on the messy middle, right? Like there really is no perfect ending. It's all, we're in the middle of something. And that gives me comfort at times, right? It's just like, if God didn't bring you this far to drop you off, that's what I always, like, I love that expression, but it's like, you've got a great life. So it's okay to expand. And it's okay that if that shifts and changes, it doesn't mean it's bad. And I think sometimes that's the piece too of growth that feels really uncomfortable, but it's like you got to prune the bush for it to grow, right? It's like I was out yesterday in the garden, like cutting back these 2 plants that got really frostbitten. And, you know, our frosts, we have so many of them, but this year we did.
Phoenix frost.
Exactly. And so these 2 bushes had been planted last spring, and I was like, they're goners, dude. Well, they came back in the middle. They came back with a gusto. Mm-hmm. And so as I was out in the garden yesterday, I was like, wait, I need to prune there was still life on some of those ends, but it just needed to be pruned.
Yeah.
The thing is going to go bananas now. It just got fertilized. My point is you still got to prune it.
Yeah.
And pruning and that uncertainty, it's all part of the pruning process.
Got to prune the bush.
Got
it. You know? And on that note.
Thanks for joining us. If you loved this episode and know of someone who would find value in it, please spread the word and share it with a friend. We are passionate about redefining success, and it would mean the world if you could help us get our mission out to as many people as possible. Please take a moment to write a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. You can also hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Connect with us on Instagram at Success Resequencing Project or via our website at www.successresequencing.com. We'd love to hear your story.